hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Sales Academic Chronicles. I am the host, Deva Rangarajan, who is the director of the Center for Professional Selling at Ball State University. Today, I actually have the privilege of talking to 4 sales researchers and sales gurus from across the pond. So I actually have 4 excellent sales researchers, and I will let them introduce themselves with Johannes at the top of our screen.
Yes, hi, my name is Johannes Habel. I'm an associate professor with Warwick Business School in the UK, experiencing Brexit from the inside. My topics of passion are personal selling and sales management, especially the digital transformation of sales.
Fantastic. And I think that given the fact that your research is on impact of relationship disruptions, it'll be very interesting to see with Brexit coming up. And it's how timely this is. So that's fantastic. So, and then we have Dr. Christian Schmitz.
Hey, thanks for having us here. My name is Christian. I'm also from University of Bochum, like my other colleagues. I'm a full professor in Bochum, and I really do research on sales management issues like compensation in B2B markets, what I do to lead my sales force in terms of leadership styles, how do I improve performance of my sales force. In my research is really around those issues. We have just recently, we wrote a paper about small account management. What do we do with all the high number of these small accounts, taking all our sales capacity. So, and actually what I do, but actually what also we do, including Johannes, Sasha, and Max, is we are really interested in real phenomena that we get from company practice, where we try to find answers from our theoretical and then from an empirical viewpoint.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting you talk about small account management, because we are now working on a theme of what we call customer success. And which is very interesting, because there the domain of managing your big customers and your small customers is being handed over a lot more to what they call customer success teams, which don't necessarily have sales targets. So, but that would be the topic of another talk when we can actually talk about this. It's very, very interesting from that perspective as well. So, and then we have Sasha Alavi.
Yeah, hi Deva. Thanks for having us. Like Christian and Max, I'm a full professor at the sales management department at the University of Bochum. Yeah, I really like this format and this talk, and because we get the chance to present our focus and our passion for sales management research. And my particular focus here, or really I can say ours, is how the work environment of sales employee is changing at the moment, because it's not only changing, it's really transforming, and the work environment itself is disrupted. And we're, for example, looking at this topic from different angles. One, like Johannes said, from a technological angle, how the technologies are changing the working environment, but also how incentive schemes are really influencing the salespeople, especially their health and their well-being, as this is also like a huge societal issue. So we're all in a very interesting area. So I'm really glad you're here and share our research with you.
And I love the fact that you talk about life, because we got a recent publication in a very small journal, but we were looking at what we call life event stress, which is something about salespeople going through divorces and stuff like that. And things in the family. And I think at some point in time, we should definitely take that into consideration with the disruptions, because the disruptions are not just from the viewpoint of what happens in the relationship, but what happens to the salesperson who suddenly has this customer being either out, or they suddenly have to then drop this customer and focus on somebody else, or they get additional workload because of the fact that somebody else has left, and now they have to take on a new kind of relationship which they did not anticipate. So I think there's a lot of interesting things here as well in terms of how we take a look at it as well. So looking forward to hearing more and also reading a lot. So
absolutely,
I'm sure for the audience, you should be taking a look at their names and Googling these folks, because they're doing a lot of really cool stuff as well. So, but last but not the least, we have Max. So Max.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Deva, for having us. I'm Max Fries from Ruhr University, and I'm actually a postdoctoral researcher. and this is actually my first publication. So I'm just starting the postdoctoral course of action. So
wow, what a beginning! So for the people for the audience who don't realize that the article that we're going to be discussing right now is one of the top journals in our field. But what makes it really interesting and what really got my interest was the fact that, yes, it's an academic article, but it is a real life problem that companies face. So without further ado, what we're going to be discussing right now is the article that they just had in a recent publication. And the title of the article is called Understanding the Impact of Relationship Disruptions. And when I first saw that, gentlemen, I must say that when I first saw that title, I said, Yake, what are they discussing here? And I took a look at the abstract and I was just nodding my head. I said, yes, this makes a lot of sense. And I come from a field where you hear a lot of practitioners say things like, you know what, in a B2B relationship, if a salesperson quits and leaves the organization, then that's it, right? And here comes four guys who come and say, well, no, it's not the end of the world. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into this topic in the first place.
Perhaps let me put it this way: a kind of working title that we started with was we called it, "Is there a good side of a divorce?"
Yeah.
So and at the very beginning, it all started with some discussions that we had with practitioners. And they were telling us, some CSOs, telling us, some general managers, telling us, from time to time, we have to restructure our sales force. We have to align our territories. We have to reassign customers from one to another salesperson. And all the time we do it, what do salespeople do? They are crying, they are yelling, they are saying, hey, don't touch our customer relationships, because this is a bad thing. And of course, a lot of these managers also argued there are a couple of good arguments why you should never, ever touch an existing relationship. And this is basically also what literature tells us, saying like, we have strong personal ties. This is our source of competitive advantage. All the trust that we have the sympathy that we have, the knowledge about the customer and about the specific relationship with this particular customer. We would lose it if we change the person who is responsible for the customer, right? And also, who knows if the new salesperson coming in is doing the same thing or the appropriate service, if he or she really knows what the customer's needs are. And that was interesting. And we said, okay, but this is very much in line with what we know from research, right? That the relationship between a salesperson is and the customer, who the customer firm, that means people in the buying center, on the customer side, that this is the most valuable resource that we have as a company. But then, and this was quite interesting for some of the representatives of these companies, kind of key representatives from the management board, told us, hey, listen, you know what? This is what salespeople are telling, but my own experience is different. Some of them they were saying like, actually, if you send in a new salesperson, what happens? New people see new things. They discover new needs of their customers. Each salesperson has kind of comfort zone, selling some goods very well, having all the good arguments, having all the competitive information, but they don't sell other things. If I send in a new person, this new person could sell different things. So we might have cross-selling. So I was saying like, hey, there could also be positive effects. And we said, hey, this could be interesting. So are there any positive effects of such kind of reassignments of salespeople? And of course, there might be also some negative effects, but we said, could there be some situations where you find that the positive effects could be even stronger than negative effects?
Absolutely.
And this is what we started our discussion with. Is that right, Johannes, Sasha? What do you think?
Absolutely. No, I think you depicted it in a very, very good way. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, that's very interesting, because one of the things that you talked about, so when you were discussing this, right, because the focus still is from our side, from the viewpoint of the supplier side, to try and take a look at managing that relationship, right? So the divorce that you talk about, did you focus only on divorces created? When I mean divorce, might not be a divorce between the supplier firm and the customer firm. It might just be a divorce at the ground level between a salesperson being taken off and somebody being put in. And the question is that, did you talk about divorce from the viewpoint of companies threatening to leave? Or are you talking more about the fact that the salespeople had to be repositioned?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense in terms of what I'm asking
Absolutely.
here?
Yeah.
Maybe Sasha, you can explain that. We looked at it at different levels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is that we looked at it at the individual level. So the divorce concerns the individual salesperson and the contact at the customer side. So it's not at the organizational level that the organizational relations were disrupted, so that the entire customer company was threatening to leave. It was really, as you said, that a repositioning of the individual salesperson.
Yeah.
And of course, then in a way, it becomes less drastic and dramatic, right?
Yeah.
If it's just the change of one contact, there can be other ties.
Yeah, indeed. I love this, Sasha, because for me, for once, I have something to go back to all the people out there who are convinced that if a salesperson leaves the relationship is gone. And especially in B2B, your answer that there are multiple other ties that you might have to foster. But now, essentially, yes, when you do that, you're still thinking about the negative side of things. But the fact that, hey, maybe the new person coming in might see something new is what I really like, is a refreshing story. Because, of course, people are going to say, yes, it makes sense that there are going to be multiple ties in a B2B context. But the new...
But interestingly, Deva, then this is one of the key questions that we had is, so the salesperson is the key representative of the supplier firm. So from the perspective of the customer, he or she represents the supplier firm. And so the individual level relationship could be the most important thing. And what we actually found in our research is that under some conditions, it's a stop or go decision. If you lose that personal relationship, you lose also all the financial benefits of that relationship. But what we also saw, and this is what you're implying, Deva, is that in some situations, you find that the organizational level between the firms, like how the relationship is set up in a broader way, can help to hinder the loss of performance.
Indeed.
And this is what is really a managerial question, is what can I do that I'm not completely dependent on what the individual level is, but I want to gain the performance effect, the positive performance effect of the individual levels. And we looked at it at different conditions, and we tried to tease out how could you create certain situations and how could you use certain situations that can help to increase performance. And Max, I know you did a lot of deep work into that area. Perhaps Max can tell us something about the conditions.
Indeed. That's what I actually wanted to ask Max, actually. So one of the things which I saw was, by the way, I really like the fact that you begin with actually not just saying this was an idea where we had 4 people sitting in ivory towers saying this is an interesting idea and we're going to go research. But I actually like the fact that you went out and spoke to you did interviews with actually practitioners, with managers to understand this. So tell me a little bit more about that process. How did you go about deciding what questions to ask?
Yeah, well, first of all, when we took at the literature, when we were first confronted with the phenomenon of a relationship disruption, that was in 2014, 15, I guess. So at the beginning of my PhD studies, and the literature was quite, decisive that this disruption should have a negative impact. So we had no idea where this research could actually go. We had the practitioners that said, well, we think it might have might have a positive effect, but likely it is negative. And so we had a phenomenon that we couldn't really understand. And from the research perspective, we needed an approach that yeah, lets us explain or lets us understand what is actually happening there. And these qualitative interviews gave us insights that we actually didn't have before. So we asked managers what is actually happening there. Yeah. So we asked sales managers, we asked purchasing managers. So we had these different perspectives. And yeah, there were plenty of arguments why such a disruption could actually have a positive effect that we couldn't actually thought of or think about. And that was quite enlightening at this stage. And then we decided that if those positive effects are probable and also likely under certain circumstances, what does theory and relationship marketing actually tell us about the conditions under which these performance effects may be positive or negative? And then we get to this quantitative study. Indeed. Where we took a look at these different contingencies that we focus on now.
And tell me about that, because so essentially what I'm hearing, and which is, I also read it, but for the sake of the other people who have not had a chance to read it, is that you took a look at doing these interviews, trying to find out what the phenomenon was, but then that helped you shape your research agenda. And then you went ahead and did a longitudinal, so that is over a period of time, you actually decided to try and take a look at situations where you might have had disruptions. So tell me a little bit more about how you went through that process.
Well, yeah, first of all, to the contingencies we had from the interviews, we learned that the relationship as it was before the disruption is quite important. So that's the starting point for any future development after that disruption. So we knew that we had to take a particular look at how this relationship is shaped at the time point of disruption, but also how it developed recently before disruption. So that was one focus of this contingency perspective. And another focus was how it is actually managed afterwards. So of course, there's a new salesperson incoming, and we need to ask the question, how is he actually performing, or what is his background, and what can we expect from this new salesperson compared to the leaving salesperson to make better or worse? And so it was clear for us that we take a look at the relationship as it was before, the starting point for the development, and how it was managed afterwards.
Fantastic.
And yeah.
And Johannes, now, again, I know that I've not talked to you before, but so building on this, so when you took a look at this, so when you're looking at the fact that you have a salesperson who's had a relationship with a customer and then stuff like that, so to what extent did you factor in the fact that maybe the salesperson who's being going is actually a good thing, that they were not good in their job? Or did you account for a fact that, did you see whether the people that you're measuring actually what their performance was before? Not performance with respect to the relationship, but their performance evaluations, because they could be great salespeople, but with that customer, they might not gel. Am I making sense out here? Did you kind of take a look at, take that into consideration as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did not have a look at basically their performance evaluation, which would be an interesting thing to explore as well. Yeah. However, what we did are two things. So first of all, what the interviews early on carved out is, well, there are pros and cons to a disruption. First of all, you run the risk of damaging what you already have with the customer. But if somebody new comes in with a new mindset, with a new, as Christian said before, with a new product portfolio they usually sell to their customers, this also constitutes an opportunity. And this led us to the idea, well, maybe we need to have a look at this in a more fine-grained manner. Maybe we should not look at this with just one performance measure, revenue or profit, but maybe we need to divide this up and look at both what we call resale revenue and new sale revenue. What I mean by this is the following. So what we analyzed is, if such a disruption occurs, what happens with revenue resulting from products that are usually sold to the customer, and what happens with revenue resulting from new products that the customer has not previously purchased. And the interesting thing was that we found countervailing effects, which is what you want to have in science, right? So we found that this resale revenue with products previously purchased, went down on average, which results from where the once the sales rep leaves, no longer serves the customer, well, chances are the customer reevaluates what he's currently doing, maybe is shifting some of the business away from the firm. But interestingly, revenue resulting from new products that the customer has not purchased before increased. We attribute this to the fact that the new sales rep who takes over from the departing sales rep comes in with a fresh perspective, with a new mindset, is able to maybe identify, see customer needs that the previous sales rep, which were blind spots to the previous sales rep, and then is able to cross-sell new products which the previous salesperson could not.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, because from the viewpoint, if you imagine that you're going to lose a little bit of sale, but maybe you're selling something more and better of higher value, I think that's very interesting. And when you took a look at that, and this is for everyone, when you took a look at the longitudinal over a period of time, because the fact is that in business to business sales, right? So essentially, it's not always just a salesperson selling it. Your ability to continuously prove, it's because it's the relationship when you disrupt. It's just not the salesperson with the customer. There are also going to be internal networks that are going to be disrupted. So is that because that's why I like the idea of not just taking a measure at one point in time, because yes, I might, after this disruption, I might sell one product because a customer, it's a novelty value. But what if my rest of my organization cannot deliver on that promise? So consequently, that customer buys something new, but does it make sense? So is that something that you also try to look at as well, to see the continuation of the customer buying the new product or the solution and continuing holding on to it, sticking on to it?
I think this is a question for Max, because you did some validation checks on the time perspectives that we included in the paper, right?
Yeah, I think we also had the moderator, the contingency of complex growth.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Accounting for that the relationships grew in complex business recently before the disruption. That may be an indicator that ties to the organization have been strengthened before disruption, and it may be more difficult after disruption to hold those ties and continue the relationship with the same efficiency as before. And that is what I think you were talking about. So we can't continue a complex business with a new salesperson that comparably to much more simpler.
Indeed. And I know we can talk about that. In the interest of time, I have a question for you, Max, and then we'll try to wrap it up in terms of what your key takeaways from each of you are. So Max, since you took a look at this, so my question to you is that, would you expect that if a salesperson, the disruption occurs because the salesperson is fired, as against the salesperson leaves voluntarily? So what would you expect? You see what I mean? Because maybe because the person was so bad that when you fired that person, any person coming in was better than what you had before. So did you kind of account for that as well?
Yeah, of course we did. That was a very important topic from a methodological perspective, because it could be an explanation if you have a bad salesperson that positive development is quite logical after disruption. But we accounted for this in a supplemental analysis, and the results showed that these effects couldn't explain what we have actually found. So there are indeed net positive effects regardless of whether the salesperson was very bad and left the organization probably due to a forced turnover or something.
And that's why I love your research, guys. It's because of the fact that it's so practical, because there's so many things that happens within a business, and to actually say that it's not all gloomy, that actually if you manage, and I think the key for me, the key takeaway is that if you manage this well, because I think that's what I really like about your what your takeaway from is, if you manage this kind of, you know that if there's going to be change that is inevitable, the way you manage it is what is going to be key to whether you're going to be successful or not. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time is that if I ask each one of you for 1 minute, what are your key things that you would suggest to managers? So I'm just going to go with Christian. So one thing that you would suggest managers based on your research.
Actually, what we can show is that if you manage those relationship disruptions well, you can obtain large performance increases. So what I would imply is working with us, because working with us again and do such kind of analysis. Because, for example, what we did with the company who assisted us with the data collection is they were saying like, you know, it's very intimidating data. Should be all this kind of data to a university working on it? Are they able to handle all the data restrictions that we have? We had to fill in large legal forms, non-disclosure agreements, etc. So what they said at the beginning is, we just give you data from a small part of one country, and for some series of years, a duration of 3 or 4 years. And then you can show us what you can do with the data. This is what we started with, but we could really provide value with it. So after 3 or 4 months, we got the data across all territories in that country, across a larger period of time. And we were able to provide them, for example, this is a very practical thing that we also describe in our paper, a very simple Excel tool, which they can use to calculate scenarios. If salespeople are leaving, for example, or changing their jobs, and all the customers or parts of the customer base, it should be reassigned. They could just fill in the transactions of all the customers who are newly assigned. And what we could do, we could calculate with that tool. It calculates the potential upward or downward potential depending on their handling strategy. So that really helps to minimize losses of interpersonal relationship disruptions, and that can also help to increase upselling revenues for those kind of disruptions. So if I should recommend something in that paper, you find our email addresses, you find we are really happy to discuss those kind of problems with practitioners, because also it increases our learning curve, and that gives us new ideas for new research.
Fantastic. Sasha?
Yeah, my key recommendation for managers would be never underestimate the power of personal contact and personal relationships, because nowadays I think there is this hype of new digital tools, new technologies, which managers may want to use to replace salespeople. And I think our results show the value and the importance of these personal ties and the personal relationships, which are still also in the time of digitalization, the important basis for a strong relationship. If you replace the individual salesperson through online channels, through technologies, bots, you're opening up the relationships to strong vulnerabilities regarding those disruptions. So in B2B context, my recommendation is really value personal relationships. And by the way, this is a finding that that emerged in several of our late studies, in where we looked at to what extent can you replace salespeople through technologies. So this would be my recommendation.
So we have only 2 minutes, so 1 minute again short. So Johannes or Max, who wants to go first? So Johannes?
All right, so my key takeaway is a little bit between the lines. I think it's very interesting that there are conditions which lead to bringing in a new sales rep allows you to increase your revenue.
Yeah.
What this points to is that in certain conditions, you just do not tap all the potential of your customer relationship. So even without having a relationship disruption, think about how could I enable my sales rep to seize more of this potential that is in customer relationships, and be more effective in cross-selling. That's for me one of the very interesting things which I'm taking away.
And Max, if I give you the last minute, yes.
Yeah, I would say there's the relationship marketing is actually a two-sided coin. So what we found is that it is not always the best answer to increase your relationship marketing efforts and preserve a relationship at any cost. but take a look at which relationship is actually in danger, if you say so, and what potentials may be hidden in this relationship if you actually exchange the salesperson. That doesn't mean you have to fire him. We don't want to talk about firing people. It is a study about relocating your resources and tap potentials by just switching constellations, if you say so.
Well, wonderful, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. But again, it's a wonderful piece of research that you do, and I'm sure that you're doing more interesting stuff as well. But again, that is it all, folks. So again, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next one. I'll make sure that I have the links to the papers in case you get a chance to read, along with the contact details of these wonderful and extremely smart professionals as well. Thank you, and stay tuned to the next.